In just under 4 months, the streets of Universal Studios Florida and Hollywood will be transformed into a spookier theme park with haunted houses, scare zones, live shows, food, merch, you name it. It's all gonna get a little bit scarier when the fall season rolls around, and that's not too far away, yet we have heard nothing about Halloween Horror Nights 2025 in both Orlando and Hollywood. We do have dates officially confirmed for both coasts, but we don't know anything about the event outside of that. We don't have tickets on sale, we don't have a logo, we don't have a tagline, we have no clue where this year's event is going, and it feels a bit strange if I'm being honest. That brings us to this video right here, in which we're going to go over all the little scraps of information we have as of the beginning of May of 2025, including some website changes, some construction updates in both Orlando and Hollywood, and just generally talking about what's happening with Halloween Horror Nights this year and why they've been so silent. But first, I want to pop over to the Halloween Horror Nights Orlando website, in which they detail some of the perks that come to hotel guests staying on site during the HHN season. Now, a lot of these perks are exactly the same as previous years. A dedicated entrance into the park, transportation between the hotels and Universal Studios Florida for HHN, but one of the things listed on the website directly references Premium Scream Night. Now, last year we did see the debut of Premium Scream Night as an add-on for HHN. It took place the night before opening night of last year's event and was a smaller capacity HHN night in which food was included, wait times were low, and the general vibes were really good. It was a very popular event for those who went, although it did come with a hefty price tag of $350 for one event night. Now, due to the popularity of Premium Scream Night from those who went, I would not be surprised if this does make a return this year. However, I am very curious if the success of Premium Scream Night is almost a catch-22. It didn't sell very well, leading to low attendance at Premium Scream Night, and overall leading to a better time because the crowds were lower. But if they were to bring Premium Scream Night back with the good word of mouth that came from the event last year, would it actually sell out, leading to more people in the park and a little bit of a higher capacity, maybe not guaranteeing as much satisfaction with the event? I'm honestly not sure, and honestly this website detail could just be a copy and paste from last year's event, but I wouldn't completely rule Premium Scream Night out of the equation because, again, it was a pretty popular offering last year, so I do see a potential future for Premium Scream Night, but again, this could just be a little detail that was copy and pasted from last year's website. Moving over to construction, though, I want to start in Orlando because the construction updates are very, very minimal here. For those who don't know how Orlando's event works, basically most of the spaces that hold haunted houses for HHN Orlando are permanent fixtures and used pretty exclusively for Halloween Horror Nights. Whether it be the sound stages in the front of the park near the New York section or the 4 sprung tents in the back behind Simpsons and Men in Black, these locations are just used for HHN and you don't really get to see them because they are all backstage. However, there is one haunted house location that is not a permanent fixture at HHN Orlando, and that is the location inside of Fast and Furious Supercharged. In previous years, they have used the extended queue for this attraction, as well as a small tent on the outside of the building as a location for HHN. And recently we did see that the HHN tent in the Fast and Furious location has gone up. You could see this just as you're about to walk into the standby queue for Fast and Furious Supercharged. Last year's HHN house in this location, Major Sweets Candy Factory, took place entirely in the tent just outside of the Fast and Furious queue building. But this year we are seeing that they have shut down the section of the queue previously used for HHN houses in this location, most recently seen in Chucky Ultimate Kill Count and first used in the Horrors of Blumhouse in 2022. For those who didn't go to those events that year, the way this house worked is that you would go into a section of the Fast and Furious queue outfitted with HHN theming. You would then go down an unthemed hallway into the tent for the second part of the house. As indicated by this section being shut off from the main Fast and Furious queue, it seems like we're going to be going back to that model for this year's event. But what's really interesting is right when you walk into the main section of the Fast and Furious queue with all the cars in the garage, we see this themed wall with themed doors. Now previously this was just a garage door, which fit in with the theming of Fast and Furious, but was just a garage door that could be opened for them to put props in. But right here we see doors that could maybe open up to a different pathway for this haunted house as it's going to be used this year. My theory is that maybe we're going to go in the section we normally started in for Chucky and Blumhouse, just on the other side in the room that is currently being used for the Fast and Furious queue. When you exit that section of the house and go towards the tent though, I think we could be going through those rusted doors back into that main garage section and through the emergency exit, which was the main entrance to the Major Sweets Candy Factory tent last year. Kind of flipping the house pathway on its head, although this is just my own guess based on what we're seeing. Honestly, who knows at this point? I just think it's exciting that we're seeing HHN construction at all. Like I said, this is really it for Orlando until we get some stuff in the streets for the scare zones. This is all we're really going to see when it comes to house construction from the theme park itself. So any little bit of information is exciting, and I'm very curious how they're going to use Fast and Furious this year, because it was quite different last year for Major Sweets Candy Factory, and I think it worked a little better, but who knows? Maybe with the right IP or right original, they could really do great things with this location, with the previous model they used for Chucky and Horrors of Blumhouse. Now moving over to Hollywood, I'm going to do a little more of a speed round because I'm not as familiar with Hollywood's event as I am with Orlando's. Now Universal Studios Hollywood is a much smaller park than Universal Studios Florida, and they don't have as many permanent spaces for HHN. They don't have sprung tents like we do here in Orlando. They have to put the tents up and take them down after each HHN event. With that being said though, construction is very underway for the 2025 event, as most of the typical tent locations have gone up and some even have some facades in progress. Gonna start first with the location in the Parisian Courtyard next to Mel's Drive-In. This location most recently held the past two Monstros houses, as well as La Llorona in years past. This is just a black tent so far, so not really much in terms of clues as to what we could see for this year's event. Staying on the upper lot section in the H lot, also known as the Curious George parking lot, we do have two tents live for HHN. This location held Insidious the Further and Ghostbusters Frozen Empire at last year's event. And right now we have facades in progress for both tents. The first one is very unknown. It is just kind of boxy at this point. In addition to that, we also have this curved piece at the top of said facade, and this has led a lot of people to draw comparisons to the haunted house exterior from the Terrifier films. Now, I did talk about Terrifier early in the year as a potential haunted house for this year's event, a haunted house that I would like to see at this year's HHN. A lot of signs are pointing to Terrifier being one of the big IPs we see at Halloween Horror Nights 2025, and if this facade keeps going the way we think it is, I think we could see a really cool entrance for a haunted house this year. But again, it is too early to say for this facade, but for the other facade on the H lot, it's a bit more telling as to what we can actually see inside. Right here we have a facade that is damn near identical to the facade for 2018's Poltergeist house. This has led a lot of folks to suspect that we could be seeing Poltergeist return to HHN Hollywood. I would be very interested to see that happen again. It has been about 7 years since we've seen Poltergeist at HHN. Usually, I feel like a good threshold for returning houses, whether they be IP or original, is about 5 years, so this fits pretty well. And Poltergeist was a fan favorite supernatural property that was featured at HHN all those years ago, and maybe they could pull something off like they did with Insidious last year, which was another fan favorite supernatural property, creating a really creepy and scary haunted house with, again, a well-known IP. Now moving down to the lower lot, we do have a few interesting developments with the haunted house in the Mummy Queue location. This was where Dead Exposure Death Valley was located last year, and where we have the appearance of yet again another black tent. But what's interesting is that there seems to be maybe a facade on the other side of the tent, where the facade used to be for this location up until 2022. At that point, we have no clue what's happening with this facade or with this haunted house, so we can't really guess anything at this point because we can't really see it. Well, right now, this is all we have in regards to the Mummy tent location. This is one of the more popular house locations for HHN. They always seem to put a pretty big fan favorite house here. So I would not be surprised if that happens this year. Maybe another original or maybe another IP. However, moving over to the T-Pad location, which is just behind the Transformers The Ride building, we have a tent with a very, very visible facade, which looks like another repeat, specifically Scarecrow the Reaping, which was last featured at HHN Hollywood back in 2022. And while I am interested in Poltergeist coming back because it has been 7 years since we saw that property at HHN, for Scarecrow it's only been 3, and based on the facade and some of the construction inside the tent, this looks like an exact repeat of that 2022 house. And not to mention, we are seeing Scarecrow the Reaping coming to Halloween Horror Nights Las Vegas, aka Horror Unleashed, in August. So seeing Scarecrow over there and then also having Scarecrow take one of your haunted house spots at Halloween Horror Nights for that year, which is pretty coveted. You don't see many originals happening at HHN Hollywood. I could see where it's kind of frustrating and it's not something I'm a huge fan of. Finally, I do want to talk about a new, big air quotes with the new, house location for this year's HHN in Hollywood. We did have a tent recently go up in the Jurassic World queue, which, yes, is a relatively new house location, but also not too new because it has been featured in the past, although it's been a long, long time. Either way though, construction is underway when it comes to the haunted houses on both coasts. In-park construction I don't see happening until much later. Typically that starts near the end of June or early July for us in Orlando. With FanFest nights happening until the end of May in Hollywood, maybe we see a similar timeline for Scare Zone construction over there, or maybe they push it a little later. Hollywood does tend to do that. But just letting you know, that's really all we have for HHN at this point. It's kind of what we can see in the park, which in Orlando isn't a whole lot. In Hollywood it's a little more, but it still really isn't a whole lot. And the last section of the video is kind of going to dive into that. Why has nothing been confirmed? Where is Halloween Horror Nights at? And honestly, on both coasts there are some pretty big reasons as to why I think we've been hearing nothing from Halloween Horror Nights. In Orlando, we have the obvious. Epic Universe is opening at the end of this month. I have plenty of thoughts and opinions. Videos are coming on Epic Universe. I'm just trying to figure out exactly how I want to tackle the park because there's so much content coming out about Epic Universe right now. But either way, Epic Universe is a big, big deal. You have some big parties involved like Nintendo, Harry Potter, you even have stuff from Universal like DreamWorks and the classic monsters. So a lot of big brands are involved and it is a big deal. You know, a new theme park doesn't open all the time, especially here in Orlando. That's going to take up quite a bit of attention when it comes to Universal, and they only have so many resources when it comes to like putting stuff out there and like social media, content, marketing, and things like that. And it's all really focused on Epic right now. Over on the West Coast, we just got the debut of Universal FanFest Nights, and that seems to be a really big hit. It is a less scary version of Halloween Horror Nights with immersive walkthroughs and fan zone experiences. So I think some of the resources for HHN are being put towards FanFest, whether that be budget or time or talent. Plus, you gotta market that as well. Obviously, they're leaning really hard into some of the anime presence. Yoshi, Dungeons & Dragons, Star Trek, Back to the Future. Again, working with big brands and trying to get that marketing push out there for FanFest Nights, which has potential to become a big event in the future. Maybe even eventually making its way to Orlando. So, first years for some big new offerings coming to the Universal parks across the country. So it makes sense why HHN has kind of taken a back seat. We also have the elephant in the room that is Universal Horror Unleashed, which is opening this August in Las Vegas and is also an HHN type of experience. This is an all new attraction that has to take steps in the right direction and has to be marketed correctly, considering we have not really heard much about Horror Unleashed up until just a couple months ago. I say this to say that Universal in general is in a very weird place right now. So much new stuff is happening that could set the tone for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years of the parks in America. 2025 is jam-packed with different stuff, and while HHN is a surefire success year after year, that's exactly the reason why I don't think we are seeing announcements super early. They don't really need to market HHN that much this year because people are going to go anyway. That's just kind of the nature of Halloween Horror Nights, and while you may agree or disagree with that, I think that's what Universal's mindset is, at least at this point. Halloween Horror Nights will have its time, my friends. We are going to get announcements. We are going to get updates. They have to let us know what's coming to the event because that will directly affect how popular the event is, of course. But especially if they know they have a banger year on their hands with big IPs and big originals that will bring people to the park, it makes more sense for them to focus on these newer offerings, these newer experiences, rather than focusing directly on advertising HHN super early. While we think about HHN all year round, it's easy to forget that we are only in May. We are still a few months out from the event, and the prime time for HHN announcements isn't really until June or July anyway. I do think we're pushing it a little bit with the ticket sales because people definitely do plan their trips around the tickets being available, Express, RIP, Unmasking the Horror Tours, all the little add-ons. Premium Scream Night, if that is actually happening again this year. I know a lot of people will cater their budgeting for Halloween Horror Nights around those offerings being available. So definitely, I think they should get on with that, at least letting people know about that, giving people a little bit of a teaser as to what's happening this year, getting the hype actually going. But like, I also understand why they're not doing that, at least at this point. Obviously, I would love for HHN to make a ton of announcements right now. I would love for us to get another original week like we did last year with announcements every single day. But either way, announcements are coming. I'm not sure when we're going to see them. I'm not sure what a timeline exactly looks like because, again, things change every single year. But that's just me. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think? Do you think HHN is really dragging their feet with the announcements? Do you think we should have already seen tickets or maybe even haunted houses announced already? I want to know all your thoughts down in the comments below. Of course, let's have a conversation about this. I really love talking about HHN with you guys. I of course want to thank you for watching this video. Honestly, the lack of information has kind of kept me from making videos. There hasn't been a whole lot to talk about when it comes to HHN this year. We're just now getting into the point where we could really deep dive into Epic, so I do have some Epic videos. I have shot a lot of footage inside of Epic Universe, and I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on that park that I do want to share with you guys. But as we move into summer, we are going to get more into Halloween Horror Nights as well. We're going to have some announcements eventually, as well as some construction going on in the park. So expect videos from me when that stuff rolls around. If you like videos like this one, you want to see more, let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Any support is truly appreciated when it comes to these little videos. And I've been talking long enough. I hope you have a great day. I will of course see you in the next one, but until then, stay spooky and take care, everybody.